This week, a baseball icon tells me about his hometown project to heal the immigration divide.
They're here to really revitalize what we got going on here, because if we don't accept this group that wants to come into town, this Hispanic group that wants to come into town, our city's going to die. Not even a slow death, a quick one. These folks are coming here to save us, actually. And number two, understand one thing, they're exactly like us. They are us.
My conversation with Joe Maddon, manager of the World Series champion Chicago Cubs. Joe tells me how his childhood and his lifelong experiences in baseball compelled him to start a conversation about diversity and immigration in his Pennsylvania hometown of Hazleton.
I'm really big into building relationships, and I'm really big into trust. You can't enact any kind of legislation until you start building relationships and start trusting one another, because when you do that, then eventually you could exchange ideas openly without any pushback, and then constructive criticism flows, and now we got something. It doesn't sound real sexy to talk about it in those terms, but that's what you need to do.
From the National Immigration Forum, I'm Ali Nirani with Only in America.
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 Only America.
Only in America.
Joe Maddon is a lifelong baseball man who in 2016 led the Chicago Cubs to become World Series champions, breaking a 108-year drought for the team. Joe has just finished his 25th season in the major leagues, 13 of them as a manager. He has lived and breathed America's favorite sport since he was a kid growing up in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. The grandson of Polish and Italian immigrants, Joe still maintains strong ties to Hazleton, which these days has a near-majority Latino population, many of whom are Dominican immigrants. In 2006, just as the nation's immigration debate was heating up, the local government in Hazleton passed a slew of anti-immigrant initiatives which set the town's diverse communities against each other. While the initiatives were eventually defeated in the federal courts, they put Hazleton on the map for all the wrong reasons. In this context, 4 years later, Joe, his wife Jay, and his two cousins felt the divided city needed to start healing. So in 2010, they started the Hazleton Integration Project, an initiative that aims to help the immigrant community integrate into their new home. I went to Hazleton a few weeks back to sit and chat with Joe. We talked immigration, baseball, and, of all things, Salinas, California.
Where did you play out there?
I played for the Little League team. I was a catcher on Little League, and that was pretty much the extent of my career.
Wait, what year was that?
Oh, it was like the 80s.
So I was there in the 77 and 78. I was there.
Right.
And lived there. There's Rosarita's Armory Cafe was my favorite. Rosarita's Armory Cafe.
Those enchiladas are incredible.
The best. I lived on the outskirts going towards, was it Route 68 going towards Salinas?
Yep.
I mean to Monterey.
Yep.
There was an apartment complex there, and all the lettuce fields were right outside you, into that really stark black dirt.
Yeah.
Loved all of that stuff. We were good. We were in the playoffs 2 years out there. 1 year we were 45-10 to start out the season.
Really?
We were that good. But it's really got a warm place. I love Monterey. I love the work over there. Ablanetti's and Michael's. I mean, God, I that's where I was introduced to calamari for the first time, done properly. The Marty Special. I think it's at Ablanetti's. I think the Marty Special is outstanding.
Well, I wanted to start there. You know,
Okay.
my baseball career ended a little bit sooner, but that's okay.
That's cool, man. That's a really, when you say Salinas, I light up. You're right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
So tell me about growing up in Hazleton. You're a 10-year-old in Hazleton. What is that like?
I've often said, and this is not an exaggeration, it was the best. It was the best place in the world to grow up. Why? Well, it was just everything was available to you, it would seem. Meaning, for me, that meant all the sports were available. The fact that I could go play baseball during the summer, I could go play basketball in different gyms during the fall, and football. So I had this year-long thing going on that was supported, coached, mentored. I had this really strong system of support. My parents, of course, started it all with the family. But the coaches and the facilities, everything was available to you. Teachers were outstanding. The schools I attended were wonderful. You felt safe. You felt safe. I think that's probably we could walk everywhere. I walked everywhere, rode my bike everywhere. And I'm talking like at 10 o'clock at night, leaving A.D. Thomas Gym, playing PAL basketball, maybe not grabbing a ride and going all the way across town in the middle of the night. A little scared, but I did it. I mean, but there was a safe feeling about it, and I just thought everything that I could possibly want was at my disposal.
And I mean, at that point, the town was mainly Italian?
No, it was diverse, man.
Really?
Oh yeah, the diversity back then
Yeah.
was Italian section, the Polish section, the Irish section, the Jewish section, the Slovaks, and it's all pretty much. When I drive around the city right now, I know the Irish were on the south side. Right now, we're in the valley here, but where my pop grew up, that was Italian. My mom, borderline between the Italian-Polish section. And that's just how it was. I mean, everybody's situated in the spot where the language is common, and then they could have customers in their little businesses or just communicate. And that was the way it was for a while. Our concept of diversity was when an Italian and a Polish kid played together.
You tell a story about when you first had the idea of starting the integration project of meeting a family at a church. But
Yeah.
before I get there, I wanted to ask what it was like growing up in a Catholic community.
Structured, very structured, traditionally based, religious based. Again, you felt you're held accountable on a lot of different levels, and that was a part I should have mentioned earlier. There was a high level of accountability for a kid back then because everybody was pretty much able to discipline you. Mm-hmm. So when it came down to the Catholic community, it was predominantly, I would say, Catholic. There's so many Catholic churches. There was also the Protestant ilk too, but when you're a Catholic, you really focused obviously on Catholicism, and you thought that was the only path. Uh-huh. That's what you were taught at that particular time. And it was wrought full of tradition. Like I said, you attended Mass every Sunday. Actually, as a parochial school kid, I attended Mass every day during the school year. Then you go on Sundays. And then during the summers, there'd be festivals at different churches in the parking lots or maybe in an open lot near the church. And you would attend different festivals all summer long. And there was a real strong sense of community and allegiance to all these particular churches. And there was. St. Stan's was the Polish, St. Joe's was the Slovaks, MPB, Most Precious Blood and Our Lady of Grace for the Italians, St. Gabriel's was the Irish. You knew all that.
Right.
But it was an anchor. It was definitely, the Catholic Church was an anchor in this community, and you belonged, and I do believe that there was a greater sense of order because of that. I know right now there's a lot being made over said of based on the controversy with the priests, but at the time it was an anchor, and you felt, again, the word safe, connected, tradition-based, events that were automatically in place for you to attend that drew you in based on the calendar. Things happened in January, February, March. Here came Easter, etc. So it was a really traditionally based, comfortable situation.
So as you grew up going to parochial schools, going to church, what was the sense of kind of learning how to treat other people?
Oh, with respect. I mean, you treated everybody with respect. And if you didn't, your mom would let you know about it, even before my dad sometimes. Your nuns definitely let you know about it. Your priests would constantly talk about it. And everybody you interacted with, it was a respect-based situation. You had to respect your elders for sure, regardless. There was no questioning whether, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but you didn't question whether they were right or wrong or if they had done anything bad in their life. They were just an elder. You respected them. Your work ethic, everything was derived out of that. But there was a high level of respect among everybody in the community. And it was, I can't even tell you, I cannot even remember certain people maybe in the community that you would not respect because there might have been something that they had done. Never even crossed your mind, never even thought of like a controversy or a scandal. You just respected everybody you came in contact with.
So then kind of fast forward a little bit here to 2006, 2007, Bush administration. You see, and these are where we saw the big immigration rallies. And then you see kind of the pushback and the reaction in communities like Hazleton. So even before you came back and kind of saw how the town had changed, how did you see kind of what was happening in the country?
Well, part of it is based on my occupation, where I work. And my first roommate in pro ball in 1976 was Richard Thon. Dickie is Puerto Rican. I got off the plane in El Centro, California, and you get off the plane, a Hughes Air West yellow plane. I'm getting off, and this blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy's walking out. I knew he was a baseball player. So I started speaking to him in English, and no habla inglés. It was Richard. It's from that moment on, Richard and I became roommates. Best. I could just go to my phone right now. We still stay in contact. I had this real strong affinity for the Hispanic people that I had met, Richard being the first one there, and eventually Maco Oliveras, another manager from Bayamón, Puerto Rico. I used to tell him I really believe there's a flow from the Mediterranean that crosses the Atlantic, eventually gets into the Caribbean. There's some kind of a jet stream in the water there that connects us culturally, because there's no difference, as far as I'm concerned, between my Italian roots and the Hispanic roots that I witnessed. My players from Puerto Rico, Cuba, Dominican, South America, the Venezuelans. I've had, of course, Mexicans. I've been in contact and involved with all these. So it was you're rallying against the entirely the wrong thing right here, folks. They are exactly like, these people are us. And to try to repel, push away, not respect, not want to accept, and understand that they're here to really revitalize what we got going on here. Because if we don't accept this group that wants to come into town, this Hispanic group that wants to come into town, our city's going to die. Not even a slow death, a quick one. These folks are coming here to save us, actually. And number two, understand one thing, they're exactly like us. They are us. The Catholic background, how they defend one another family-wise, and the closeness, the tight-knit community, all that stuff is exactly how I'd grown up.
So, and it's interesting, I looked at the data, 10% of Major League Baseball is Latino. Now, in 2016, over 27%. So, you've seen the country change kind of through the ballpark.
What was the numbers again? I'm sorry.
So
75. Oh, there's 12% Latino. I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, I guess I haven't, I'm not even realizing it. My dad was a simple guy. My dad was a plumber. But if I spoke badly of anybody, just said anything off color, off the mark, he'd let me know quickly. If I use a slang term to describe somebody else, my dad let me know that's not how we do things around here.
Yeah.
So maybe even not realizing the influence my pop had on me at that time. And then again, I wouldn't know those numbers. I understand those numbers. Part of it's just economics, and there's more availability, and, the kids in Latin America sign for less money. That's another story entirely right there. Plus, they're really good.
Yeah.
They're really good baseball players. That's interesting. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
But,
it's going from 10% to 27%. And it's, I was talking to somebody who was involved with some of the NBA teams, and she was saying the same thing of just the growth of the foreign-born players within the NBA.
Well, I think part of that's just scouting too, and that's just getting out there looking for a greater source of talent, a larger source. I'm even looking at the black player, gone from 18.5% down to 6.7%. I think that's just, a lot of that is because of the other sports. I think they're just being grabbed in basketball and in football. You go right from college right to the major leagues.
Right.
In our sports, you got to go from high school to college, and you got to beat your head a little bit to get. So if you're really a great athlete. And a lot of these black kids that I'm sure are jumping in there are great athletes. So it's an easier path or a quicker path to get where you want to be. So I don't even know if that has something to do with it. I don't even know if baseball's not doing a good enough job.
But regardless, baseball, the way that baseball has changed, the way that professional sports have changed, resembles how the world has changed.
Yeah, of course. Right. And again, I have not thought about that necessarily, except that, and maybe that's a good thing, because I don't even see that stuff. I don't even see that. I don't see that. I would never have known that had you not pointed that out to me, because I am colorblind. I don't gauge anybody based on any of that.
So then I always kind of wonder, as Major League Baseball becomes more diverse, that fan in the stands, and we'll come back to Hazleton, but that fan in the stands, do they see an immigrant or do they see a ball player?
Well, they see a ball player. Yeah. Absolutely. There's no questioning whether he's an immigrant or not. It's absolutely, he's a baseball player. And that goes back from Roberto Clemente from Puerto Rico, Juan Marichal, Dominican Republic. The Cuban players. Luis Tiant is a good friend right now, too. Venezuela-wise, my God, there's been so many great players out of there, even Omar Vizquel. More recently, Victor Martinez and our good friends now. They're not immigrants. They are definitely very good baseball players. And you're saying that to me for the first time. I never even put that together. But you're right.
They're immigrants excelling in America's pastime.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And there's a lot of immigrants excelling in other components of our society that nobody even realizes.
Right.
And they'll get the same kind of publicity that a shortstop does from San Pedro de Macorís, or an outfielder does from Cuba. It's pretty interesting. You're right. You're right on.
So, a big reason why we were so excited, I was so excited to learn about Hazleton Integration Project, but also we're thrilled to give the award, is because I feel that the project does amazing work here in Hazleton, but through your leadership, you're that bridge between that shortstop from Venezuela and the new Hazleton citizen from Mexico, and helping people understand that.
Right, and that's what I've been trying to get done. And again, if I could be here more often, but then again, if I were here more often, maybe my voice would not carry the same weight, because what I do obviously plays into this, and I get it. You still want to see it continue to grow and get better. From the beginning, I try to make that point that you're speaking of right here, and really having people understand it. Believe me, folks, they're no different than we are. We bleed the same colors. Ty and I tried to create was, when we were kids growing up here, we often heard stories from our parents about our grandparents and great-grandparents moving to this country. We're so romantic and so, God, I wish I'd been there for that moment. And God, I'm so proud of Grandpa or Grandma. You're getting a chance right now to see it in real time exactly what it looked like. It's exactly what it looked like. When these folks come here from wherever these countries are and they show up and they're starting from the bottom and working their way up, that's exactly what our grandparents did. And also they were repelled. They did the language, the dirty kids, the music they listened to. Look at those people. Same process. Yeah. They were talking about my grandpa at that particular time. So I'm trying to have people understand there's when you're repelling the group that's coming in right now, it's tantamount to what had happened exactly back in the day. If you could really put yourself in that time frame, in that space and time, that's exactly what's happening to our grandparents. Right. And of course, you would never want that to happen to them.
I listened to the interview you did with David Axelrod. And he put it so well, where he said, we have an opportunity to relive history.
Yeah.
Right? And it's absolutely true.
That's where I've been at with this whole thing. I mean, I think about it all the time because when I talk about what was Grandpa, my dad would have to tell me what Grandpa was like. My mom would have to tell me about her father, my grandpa, who I never met, who died from black lung, from working in the mines, that was spitting up black on his deathbed. She's got to relay that. And I need to hear that. I wanted to hear that. And my Polish grandpa, my mom's pop, I don't even know if he spoke that much English. And I know my grandmom, her mom, she lived with my mom until she was 96, strong Polish accent, brilliant woman, had all of her faculties right to the very end. And I needed to hear that. But I know when they first arrived, and they arrived at Jim Thorpe and got off the train, and they got together and they started this this big family, actually, right a block from where we live right now. They were, I don't want to say frowned upon, but there was a lot of barriers to be pushed through by these people at that time. And it's the same small-minded thinking that was working against them then that works against the group right now.
So let's say you're the mayor of Hazleton in 2011, right? Or the mayor of any town right now in this moment.
Yeah.
How would you do that job and help people kind of understand these differences?
See, I really think, and it's no different, I hate to say this, than doing what I do with baseball-wise. I really believe that the most important thing to do is start bringing people together. And how do you do that? You got to have meetings, conversations, and it doesn't have to be these grand in Harmon Guy Stadium. I'm saying small little pockets, and we were teasing about it before, but I'm really big into building relationships, and I'm really big into trust. You can't enact any kind of legislation until you start building relationships and start trusting one another, because when you do that, then eventually you could exchange ideas openly without any pushback, and then constructive criticism flows, and now we got something. So I mean, it doesn't sound real sexy to talk about it in those terms, but that's what you need to do. Right. And so it would be this campaign to establish relationships. That's ambiguous. How do you do that? And Mike, I'm saying my concept would be pockets of meetings throughout a community, throughout a district, whatever. And you start talking about commonalities and differences and see where we can come together and resolve this a little bit. Because until we trust each other, I promise you, you know this, nothing's going to happen. Yeah. So everybody wants, I don't know, their agenda to be met regarding economics, social medicine, whatever it might be. But stop. Let's get on the same page first, and then we'll talk about the issues.
So earlier this year, we did this, what we called a learning campaign, and we convened living room conversations in 26 rural and suburban communities across the country, like from Coeur d'Alene to Corpus. Yeah. It was so fascinating. And one of the things that ran through each conversation was this question of identity, and what does it mean to be an American? It was really remarkable to me because we had to let people answer the question they wanted to, the way they wanted to, and just sit with it. So what does it mean to be an American today?
Today, it's kind of confusing, actually. It's kind of a confusing situation. And again, I rely on, in my mind's eye, what it was like as a kid growing up. And that would be, again, it was about respect. It was about communicating with your neighbor. It was about helping one another. It was being there for whomever. There was a strong sense of pride, actually, of being, I hate this for lack of a better way, being better in a lot of ways compared to the rest of the world, different countries in the rest of the world. You felt like you had a better method. You felt like when it came to the group getting together, that this group, quote unquote, would have each other's back. Yeah. Even more so than another group would. So there's a lot of ambiguities involved with that, but there was a safety about it. That you belonged in this country, you lived in this country, that you felt safe automatically. If there was an issue or problem, that you're going to figure out how to get it done, how you're going to resolve this better than another group would be able to do that. That you would lead that you would be at the forefront, you would lead, would not follow, ever. The one term, I guess, if I had to reduce it to one thing, it would just be you had right on your side somehow, that you as a group, as a country, we figured out the right way to do things, and we were supposed to lead the rest.
But that's that question, that concept of leadership. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we work with people on all sides across the aisle, and my sense is that political leadership, we can't count on it anymore.
No.
So we have to find leadership somewhere else.
Well, I've talked about this. Leadership cannot be. Yes, you can be elected and you can be given a position, but leadership needs to be taken. A lot of times when it comes to electing leaders, you don't have really good choices. But if you're supposed to vote and you do vote, you might be voting for the lesser of several evils. Just because somebody's been elected, to me, does not make them a leader. I mean, to me, a leader truly has to have pure intentions. He has to have the intentions of somebody else ahead of his own always. A leader on the worst of his days still has to walk into a room and pick everybody else up. A leader, it's almost like an altruistic component that you have to have about you that supersedes everything else about you in order to really lead. I still think you do lead from the front. You don't lead from behind so much. I think you have to set the right example for everybody to follow. For me, leadership is something that's taken. Leadership, the elected officials, man, you can't count on that as necessarily becoming a leader. And again, getting back to it, it's something that's earned. Yeah. We all recognize who we want to follow. We recognize that. There's something about people innately, inherently that attracts. And again, it's going to be a like-minded kind of a thing. Normally, we're probably going to agree their philosophies are. Obviously, that's a part of it. But I also believe there's people that I believe are good leaders that I don't necessarily agree with all the time, too. And there's something about their persona. I think there's an honesty about them. There's a frankness. There's a transparency about them. You never feel like they're holding back or trying to scam you in any way. And again, that's the relationship. That's the trust, I guess, is shining through this person. And last point, authenticity. I mean, if you are not authentic, I think almost everybody has this authentic chip within them that they recognize authenticity. They could see a phony. Somebody that is a phony may get over for a little bit, but eventually it catches up to them. I think real leaders have an authenticity about them that everybody can identify with, and that's what makes people want to follow them.
When you're walking through the center, mm-hmm. and you're kind of seeing these families and young people from other mm-hmm. countries, when do you see somebody say, okay, that kid's a leader?
You're always looking for the one, probably if I'm walking through, that wants to speak to me first. Mm-hmm. That's not afraid to come talk to me, but you want them to do that with respect and not just glib in a sense where they're trying to be the big shot of the group. I've always looked at that, the kid that wants to speak up for the rest of the group normally. But then you're looking for the intention. Is it Eddie Haskell or is this real? Mm-hmm. Is he authentic or is he just trying to whatever, or she? That's one thing I've often always appreciated, the kid that's not afraid to speak up. I like that actually a lot, and then it's up to us. But most of the time, I think in a setting like that, there's an authenticity about the kid that wants to be the one speaking for the rest of the group.
For a kid whose parents weren't born here, right, and that immigrant experience and being able to meet you and be able to say, hey, this is who I am.
But I'm impressed with them. See, here's the thing. I mean, I speak a little Spanish, but I don't speak well enough. These kids speak 2 languages perfectly. Yeah. And I'm jealous of that. I'm really jealous of that. And I think that's one of the things that we don't even understand, that just speaks to intelligence to me. Mm-hmm. When you get these young kids coming up, and then when they speak English, and I've said this before, I'm going to say it right now, their grammar, their ability to use verbs properly, adverbs properly, exceed most everybody I grew up with. I mean, these kids really are sharp. If they're impressed with me, that's fine. But I'm even more impressed with them. When I watch them, I watch their faces, I watch how happy they are, how eager they are, how interested they are. They absolutely are sponges. They're just trying to become better mm-hmm. at everything. And it starts with just knowing 2 languages. To me, is very impressive.
Yeah. So I wanted to go back to what we were talking about earlier, and the idea that the fan in the stand sees a ball player on the field, not an immigrant.
Right.
How do we expand that kind of sense so that when they leave the ballpark and they see an immigrant neighbor or fellow church member, they equate the 2?
Well, from the fans' perspective, that's more difficult, because from our perspective in the dugout, man, I'm telling you, this, you got it. We're all on the same page. We are one big community. That's it. That's a great question. It really is. For me, it's just about, I'll take Hazleton, for example. I've challenged people to walk into our center. Mm-hmm. And I said, for all of you who are opposed to us or don't quite get us, I challenge you to walk. I said, I'll give you 5 minutes. I'll give you 5 minutes walking in our center talking to our kids. 5. Yeah. And I promise you, after 5 minutes, you will change your mind completely. A lot of times I think, with television and the way news is generated today, everybody makes up their mind independent of actual interaction. And that's a bad method. So I think a part of what's going on inappropriately right now is that everybody's making up their minds based on information that's thrown at them by different sources. And again, it's like-mindedness. So if you're really into this more of a liberal perspective, you're going to seek that, and of course the more conservative. And if you never leave your front porch or your basement, your whole world is going to be, your opinions are going to be based on that information. Wrong. You need to get out of the house, and you get out and get involved and actually figure out what you do believe in. Because I think too much of it's generated from hearsay, not even old wives' tales, just social media and all the news and media outlets, and just the people's ability right now to just write and throw things out there non-vetted. That to me is a real dangerous component of what's going on right now. So if you really want to understand, if the fans at Wrigley Field really want to understand the diversity situation that we feel and we feel so strongly about, or if you're a resident in Hazleton, live on Grant Street, and you're against the Hazleton integration project, just take a ride down to the center, and I'll give you 5 minutes. And after 5, talking to our kids, I promise you'll change your mind.
The way I always put this is that people, they love and respect the Maria or the Muhammad they know, but they still remain afraid of the Maria or the Muhammad that they don't know. Yeah.
Awesome. That's pretty good.
It's about creating that experience.
That's pretty good. That is, you're probably right on with that. That's unfortunate, but I can't deny that that's probably true. But again, you still got to take that first step.
Right.
The first step has to occur, that you find the first Muhammad or Maria and meet them. And I think from that you will gain. So there's a certain amount of courage, because, listen, these people are moving outside of their comfort zones.
Right.
And that's the thing about the Hazleton folks that have not gotten on board. I don't want to hammer against these people. These are the people I grew up with. These are the people that I talked glowingly about that really made me feel safe in this city for so many years. So it's not about hammering on them, and I understand why they feel the way they feel. But let's get beyond that. Let's move forward from that. And how do you do that? I'm saying, come on down and meet the group. Whatever that fear might be, you have to really go face to face. Whatever that fear, and there's a fear involved. It's fear.
Absolutely.
It's fear. It's not misunderstanding and fear are probably synonymous terms. So just get away from that fear. Go see the kids. Okay, that first trip, you kind of get it a little bit, you go back home, but then all of a sudden this trepidation starts building up again. Go see them again. And eventually, as these people become part of your daily life, then any Maria and Muhammad become accepted. I don't expect an immediate turnaround, but you have to get over these contrived fears based, again, on situations that you just heard about but have never actually encountered.
But it's also on us to respect and hear those fears.
Absolutely. Right. That's my point. I mean, in the beginning, I was not empathetic enough about that. I was really too harsh about folks that were against us. And I made some comments, and one that I did make that was about, people are going to either come on board or after 10 or 15 years eventually going to pass away, and then it's all going to right itself. I didn't mean that in a derogatory manner. It was just a fact I thought I was trying to point out, but I did not fail to recognize that we all need to have the folks that are against all of this understand it better, and then hopefully we'll find this common ground that I was talking about earlier. So I really would love to be able to reach out more to the people of Hazleton. For instance, the event we're doing this year, Joe Namath's going to be there. That appeals to an older generation. Big band's going to be there. That appeals to an older generation. You got to have these folks connect with you somehow,
right.
And whether it's through music or an old icon like Joe Namath, whatever it might be. Joe, I'm sorry, it's not old.
He's always like sending me comments.
He's awesome, man. I thought it would be great to connect with this other group in some way that would attract them to come to an event that we're holding. And so if the vehicle may have to be a big band, Joe Namath at the Pines, which used to be an iconic restaurant we had on 309 that's now part of this old Hayden Bank building downtown. Magnificent, the work that's been done to fix this up. So now you're bringing them back downtown, the Broad Street, which they remember grandly from the years past, and so do I. And so you now do this really cool event down there. Maybe there'll be a connection drawn just out of the location, nostalgia, whatever that
It's a comfortable space.
Exactly. It's something that just might elicit that warm fuzzy that makes you want to take a deeper look.
Yeah. So I've got a couple more questions for you. Are you optimistic about the future?
Yeah, absolutely I am. That was pointed out to me by Marcel Lashman in the early 80s. Marcel is a very good baseball coach. He told me one day that I was really optimistic, and I had no idea what he was talking about. I am optimistic. I always believed in good's going to win out over bad. I always believe that. But I also believe that it's up to us to set out the right example, to connect in a way that everybody, again, put your prejudices aside and really take a better look at what's going on here. You got to come out and be uncomfortable. And being uncomfortable is really important. One of my teachers says being comfortable to be uncomfortable. When you're uncomfortable, that's where growth can occur. You're not going to grow in a comfortable situation. So I think you need to we need to put ourselves in more uncomfortable situations, meaning seeking differences, different opinions, different thoughts, different methods that are contrary to what we like to do right now, and see how we fit into that, or why this is so popular with people on this other side of this fence right now. To get into this uncomfortable moment, and that's where growth occurs. And I think if we could push that enough, optimism will flow out of a greater good in regards to more people. We just have, I don't know that we have to have necessarily the same philosophy on everything. Again, we just got to be willing to communicate with each other to make it work. It's not, we could sit here and talk all day about a subject, and after 5 or 7 or 8 hours, we could still disagree. But I like this guy now. I like this guy, and I could talk to him about things and understand that this is what he believes, this is what I believe. It's no different than believing in a religion, or like in the Yankees over the Red Sox, whatever, the Cubs and the Cardinals. And that's okay, but at the end of the day, I like this guy. I trust this guy. And when you get to that point, then optimism can flourish. Yeah. And you could still create really positive results if everybody at least communicates and builds a relationship and starts trusting one another.
And there are not many topics out there that are more uncomfortable than immigration.
No, and especially right now, it's highly uncomfortable. But again, we are reliving history right now, and we don't even realize that. We don't even realize that we're going through the same method that our grandparents went through, the same stigmas and the same fight that they had. We're witnessing it firsthand, but now we're the perpetrators of that. We're the ones that are making this group feel uncomfortable or bad coming in. Listen, nobody wants criminals and bad people into nobody does. And of course, there's a vetting process that has to be in place in order to make sure that doesn't occur. However, in the meantime, we need new thoughts, we need new ideas, we need new folks coming on in different parts of this country to make it all flourish. So I'm all about it, obviously, the integration and the immigration, but let's not miss out on this opportunity to replay history.
So the name of the podcast is Only in America. Okay. So if you complete this sentence, only in America, ...
Only in America that Joseph, John, James Maddon could be sitting down talking about integration and immigration 60-some years after he had been born. It could only happen in America, in Sugarloaf, Pennsylvania, Hazleton, Pennsylvania right now.
Thank you, Joe. I really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming by.
Joe Maddon is the manager of the World Series winning Chicago Cubs and the founder of the Hazleton Integration Project. There's more about Joe and Hazleton at our website, immigrationforum.org. While you're there, why not subscribe to Only in America?
Support for the National Immigration Forum comes from the James Irvine Foundation, expanding opportunity for the people of California, and from the Carnegie Corporation of New York, established in 1911 by Andrew Carnegie to promote the advancement and diffusion of knowledge and understanding.
This is Only in America. I'm Ali Noorani. If the midterms showed us one thing, it's that America is increasingly divided. And with Congress now under split management, compromise on immigration becomes more difficult. Congressman Leonard Lance, a Republican from New Jersey and a member of the House Problem Solving Caucus, gave his perspective on Bloomberg TV.
I don't think there will be a shutdown, and I think we'll reach a compromise, and there may be greater border security funding, but I don't think we're going to be building a wall. I don't know whether the funding will be for a period of time until the new Congress is seated, or whether it will be for the rest of the fiscal year. Probably for several months, but not for the rest of the fiscal year.
And Democrats in the House of Representatives are not in a concession mode. Here's Minority Leader and likely to soon be the next Speaker, Nancy Pelosi.
Look, President Ronald Reagan, President George Herbert Walker Bush, President Clinton, President George W. Bush, President Obama all valued the contribution of newcomers to our country with their hope, their determination, their optimism, their courage to make the future better for their families. They're all American traits. And when they come with those values, they make America more American. Other presidents saw that. This president used it as in fear-mongering. I just don't think that's right. But in order to get in a position to fight it, we had to win on the issues that strike right to the financial security of America's working families, and those are our values.
And yet, there's something bigger at play here. On Election Day, David Brooks wrote in the New York Times, "Here's the central challenge of our age. Over the next few decades, America will become a majority-minority country. It is hard to think of other major nations down through history that have managed such a transition and still held together. One sign of that transition happening comes from the choices made in the midterms by many white women and by evangelicals who supported President Trump back in 2016. Tess Clark is an evangelical Christian and a longtime Republican in Texas who voted for a Democrat for the first time last week. She supported Beto O'Rourke, who came close to taking Ted Cruz's seat in the Senate. Tess's decision was reported in the New York Times and ABC News. And on the New York Times podcast, The Daily, Tess discussed with her father, an evangelical Trump supporter, how her faith had informed her choice and how the migrant issue was critical to it.
I just think at the root of our faith, it feels like you have the Christianity of empire and you have the Christianity of the vulnerable. And it feels like that's where everyone is so split, is that some like people who are both professing faith, who are both reading the same Bible, who both say, I'm a follower of Jesus, are coming out on the other side of this in completely different camps with completely different thoughts. And both people are saying, both sides are saying, I'm listening and I'm hearing from God. And I feel like that's not God. I feel like somebody's missing him along the way.
Well, yes.
And maybe no one's going to say it's them, right? But to me, it seems like we're following two different gods.
I mean, I know that everybody's an individual. I mean, we're all God's children. But, I mean, we would be foolish to think that everyone is going to be saved. Some people are going to have to suffer. I mean, there's going to be a lot of suffering coming on before the end of times. I mean, the end times are coming when Jesus is going to rule and reign on this earth again. I mean, it's not going to get any better the closer it gets to the end. I mean, it tells you in the Bible that the closer you get to the Lord, the more you're going to be persecuted.
Well, maybe that migrant caravan, they're really close to the Lord. They're stopping and they're praying all the way here. I feel like they probably have a lot to teach us about faith.
Listening to Tess and her father, I'm reminded of a woman in South Carolina who participated in one of our living room conversations earlier this year. Born in the United States to immigrant parents, she told us, I'm proud to be an American, but I don't know if America is proud of me. I mentioned this quote at the end of a talk I gave at Trinity Church in Boston last weekend. An elderly man in the back of the room raised his hand during the Q&A. He said, to paraphrase, that quote about whether or not America is proud of the woman with immigrant parents, it made my mind stir. He told the room he was an immigrant from, I think it was Barbados. He's been in the U.S. for 40 years, contributing at a very high level. He's never asked America for anything. His voice wavered as the room grew quiet, and he asked me, what do we need to do to make America proud of us? I was speechless. In fact, I don't even remember what I said after staring at the microphone for 30 seconds. In the end, it's a question for all of us, regardless of party. How, at a time when the President of the United States exploits the fears Americans have of immigrants, do we help Americans be proud of immigrants? Well, in this episode, Joe Maddon, founder of the Hazleton Integration Project and World Series champion, taught me that building bridges to heal divides takes a team of leaders. And most importantly, we all have a position to play on that team. I'm Ali Nirani. That's all for this week. I'm off to batting practice, so wish me luck. With thanks to the staff of the National Immigration Forum, especially producers Regina Medina and Emily Chow, and executive producer Kathleen Farrell. Join us again next week for Only in America.